Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 119, and we put on our high heels and fedoras to discuss the hugely successful films Barbie and Oppenheimer. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible! That's your friend, because Wes the same guy who hung up in my face because he was mad about a show we was talking about. And I really just hung up in my face. That man mean.
Let's start there.
Wes be mean. Nah, I'm going to call him on the show.
Welcome to Confidently Wrong. Tell us the story.
Yeah, so me and Wes aren't friends right now. Well, really, I'm still friends
You
with
hung
Wes,
up
but I don't
on
think Wes
Savon?
is friends with me.
You rage quit a conversation, and now he's gone.
I literally said, I told Wes
His screen just went blank.
And
So
then it just said Wes left party. And that nigga hung up in my grill. I was like, God damn, this man rude than a motherfucker.
So embarrassed.
That wasn't even like it's not like I was attacking him personally. It's not like I made
No,
fun
he
of
was
his
just
wife or
like,
child or said some
all right.
actual shit. I was just, and the worst part, we were agreeing about the shortcomings of the show, but you just fixated on some shit that was just patently false, and then just decided to rage and quit.
It wasn't patently false.
All right.
Are you
But I
talking
didn't-
about Secret Invasion?
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
about Secret Invasion.
But
Oh
I
my
didn't-
God.
I didn't rage quit. So I thought,
You just regular
because I had
quit.
my headphones on, I really thought that me and Savon were talking over the phone. And
Bitch, we had just
so I
finished
turned-
the Apex game.
I know, it was dumb. My brain was tired, I guess. So I turned off the PS5, which cuts off the conversation. And it was like right at the moment where we're like agreeing to like stop talking about this, sort of. But like Savon was getting in his like last thought and didn't quite finish his last thought yet. And then I hit shut down. And then his voice stopped in my head and I was like,
And then he started texting me like the motherfucker sorry about it. I was like, all right, bro. Whatever, I'm gonna just
so
go
I'm
to
like
bed.
immediate like Savon's gonna think I just like totally like hung up on him and
I'm
I'm,
not
like
gonna
texting him
think that.
furiously.
That's what happened.
And then
It's not a matter of opinion. There's no open. This is not open. This is not Oppenheimer. There's no interpretation.
you were
to
gonna
this.
assign an intention to it that wasn't there, and I was like, oh my God. And like, you know, I'm a people pleaser, right? Like, I don't like it when people are mad at me. I don't like conflict. So I'm like texting him like, Savon, like that was a mistake. I totally thought blah, 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 blah.
In all
And then
caps.
it just says like delivered, but like there's no red. So I'm like, oh man, he's like not with his phone. Like he's never going to see this. He's just sitting here for
Wait,
10
do I have
minutes
my read
thinking
receipts
like
on?
Wesley is
turn
a
that off.
punk. You must, I guess.
Ugh, no,
So-
hold on.
I was like,
So then you
And-
started double and triple and quadruple
I know. I was
texting?
like,
Boy,
and I was
got
like,
hit with a
okay,
wall
don't
of
send no
text.
more. Just
Nah, man. What's different for that shit?
How convenient, Wes. You just turned off your PlayStation. Uh-huh. It didn't get too heated,
Yeah.
and you
So I
jumped
ran-
out?
I basically slammed the door and hung up the phone in Savon's face while he was talking.
In a
That was,
conversation you started. I didn't bring up Secret Invasion. Your
not a good
ass
look.
asked me, did you see Secret Invasion? Yeah. And we start talking about it, and then he won't have all his weird West takes and then hang up in my grill. Like,
It was not that weird.
man, this man,
You're
this
right.
man
I mean,
got
we
me,
were
this man got
mostly
me
agreeing.
fucked up. It's
Oh,
cool.
man.
It's cool.
We were
mostly agreeing. I hung
Luckily,
up on
I'm clearly don't agree about some of the shit, the key shit. It's cool though, Wes. I'm a forgiving person, and I believe in being
Thank
a big
you.
man.
Thank you.
So,
I apologize.
Don't gotta
It was Not my
apologize.
intention, but the impact might have been a certain way.
Wes, I'm not mad. I'm just, slightly disappointed, and that's okay. I'm, we'll move past this.
I'm glad that Savon is low key because man, whew, that could have been
Brian, looking at
ugly.
you.
Real like Jen. Jen watches Real Housewives of whatever Orange County and all those shows. Like this would be like a 3-episode arc that they would draw out forever in that kind
The
of
little-
show.
the-
I think we should draw this out.
No,
Those people do
Let's
not.
thread this through our next episode.
Yeah,
Man.
just the whole, the reality show sound cues was just doom. Because someone says something, they cut to the confession.
And they play back the
and then it's just a body language. And then, then me in the
Hold on the
confessional.
stare.
Nah, me and Wes are normally cool, and I'm pretty chill with most people. But if somebody just hang up in my face, oh no, we have a problem.
yeah. And then they cut to the next time you meet up. Yeah.
Hey, Savon, how you doing? Good.
Oh, you're at a party, and then you got to pull Savon to like a private couch in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, can we talk? I think we should talk.
There's really
Absolutely,
nothing to
that's what
talk
happens on
about.
those shows. Well, no, you got to talk about. Don't you have to talk about it with your friend first?
Oh yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
like
that's
or
how
a
it goes.
mutual friend first, or something.
Someone
and
like
then,
pumps it
and
up.
then that person says you're like talking shit about them, and then you meet on the side, or you meet at dinner. And then you just have this big showdown in front of everybody at dinner for some reason.
Oh yeah,
And then all the other friends are on the periphery, like commenting on. I think they're talking to each other.
It starts off.
Oh, so you've seen these shows too, because that's how they all go.
I mean,
Right.
my mom
Shout
used
out
to
Jen.
watch them.
It's called I'm Married and I Have to.
Real Housewives, man. All right, well, I don't normally. How do I normally do the intros? Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to Confidently Wrong. We took an inadvertent break. I don't think we need to go into the details, but we're back. We're excited.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. So we're excited because this last weekend was the opening of Barbenheimer. That's Barbie and Oppenheimer for those of you living under a rock. And we're going to get to both of those movies because we went out and saw them this week and enjoyed the S out of them. So let's talk about that.
I actually saw them on like two screens right next to each other. And so my left eye was watching Barbie. My right eye was watching Oppenheimer. It was
the new
an
3
experience.
glasses. Yeah.
Man, that sounds like a really good
So,
double feature.
Opening weekend last week, they got garnered, took in, I think this is domestic, 150 million for Barbie, about 80 million for Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
So really big weekends for both of those movies. I thought Oppenheimer would do better than Barbie, kind of going in. It seemed like the bigger movie, the more cinematic production, blah, blah, the one you have to see on the big screen.
What do you
mean, Barbie-
know, Wes?
It's a
I didn't know
3-hour
anything.
niche talking movie. Like, even if it's good, that was never going to be as popular as some other stuff, just off of, I think, audience appeal alone. I couldn't
think
I
so?
really
I really didn't
pay
know
my
it
family
was-
to go see Oppenheimer.
I didn't think it was going to be such a talky movie. I actually thought there was going to be action.
Oh, no.
Uh,
I'm sorry you thought that. I knew that. Oh, man, I'm sorry.
When there was more action, the action part was actually the best part, but that only lasted like 3 minutes of screen time. So, I mean, but I think overall it sounds like pretty successful. I think the Oppenheimer folks are probably pretty excited for what they took in, and
Movies are back. That's what that
yeah.
weekend was about.
yeah, Barbie took in a lot.
People
There's
went
been
to
a lot
the
of other
theater.
shows. Yeah, people were in it, and like Savon said, man, people were dressed up in their pink. They were loving taking those pictures in the little like cardboard setup things where you could pretend you're in the Barbie package.
Oh, I wish I could have
like-
done that.
Oh, I definitely
Put
did
me
that.
out the press. I've been feeling brand new. You hear me?
Yeah.
Were you decked out in pink, Savon? That's what we got to know. Were you wearing a pink fuzzy robe the entire movie?
I wish, man. I have like one solid pink shirt, and it was just straight up. It's in my dirty clothes right now, so I just wasn't able to make it happen. And when I got my
Wait,
ticket,
we should talk about the outfit you're currently wearing, though. For those of you who can't see this at home, Savon is low cut for sure because he's wearing this black silk thin robe
It's thin.
with a gold trim down the inside of the lapel and on his sleeve cuffs. It is elegant. It is regal. I think
It's so comfortable.
you think of royalty wearing this, or a
I feel like T'Challa.
maybe like a very big rock star, music star, celebrity might wear this in their suite, in the hotel kind of
I think
thing.
it's like you wear it during cleanup kind of outfit. If you catch my drift.
Yeah, boy. No, but I mean, I'll send it to you later. I did take one picture. I went with a friend, and I wore their like pink hat to take a picture in front of one of the little Barbie things because for the culture. But yeah, people
Nice.
was dressed up for all this, both of these movies.
We could put that on the gram.
Yeah. But you were saying,
And people at Oppenheimer, they were wearing suits too. Like after the
Were they?
movie ended, like there was a whole row of people that got up, as like men and women wearing like skinny ties and Jackson. I thought they came from graduation. I was like, who are these people?
They're just Mormons. They're going to church. So yeah, I mean, I think just fun to talk about both of these movies in succession. We're gonna talk about Barbie, and then we're gonna talk about Oppenheimer. So we talked a little bit about this movie a couple months ago in our summer movie preview leading up to the release. Wesley famously thought that this movie was going to be a dud, and called it out as kind of like, I'm just really not interested.
Bravo,
doesn't
Wes.
seem like this movie needs
Confidently
to exist.
wrong.
And then
Bullseye.
200 million people across the world have seen this movie now. I think gross, like overall across the world, it's close to 700 million or something like that. So,
Oh my God.
$1 million. So, that's a lot of people having seen this movie. So what was your, let's remind us, just be quick, and then we'll get into what you actually thought of the movie. Savon, I believe I recall you were into it, right?
Oh yeah, I was hyped about this movie the moment I saw the trailer because, and I said this on our summer episode, a movie like Barbie, to me, lended itself to being a satire, a parody, a really good comedy. If it was gonna be a really silly, childish Barbie movie, that was not the energy that the first impressions and trailers gave me of that. And honestly, I felt like I got exactly that. But I was very hyped for this movie going in.
Right on, Brian. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't hyped about it, but I thought it would be a pretty decent watch. Like, I was into just the fact that Greta Gerwig, who made Lady Bird and Little Women, was
Lady
behind
Bird.
the helm on this one, and it looked like very self-aware and fun. However, the most recent trailers that I had seen, like just like a week or two ago, looked kind of bad, if I'm being honest. So like my interest in the movie really had a sharp decline. I was like, oh no, it looks generic now based on the last trailer. So I was coming in a little mixed.
All right. So this movie had a huge hype machine coming into it. They did marketing up the wazoo. They painted a whole house mansion pink. They did a ton of crossover tie-overs with other products. And I think it really seemed like they tapped into the nostalgia factor times 1,000, right, for a lot of people. And then they also sort of tapped into this feeling, I think, that women are expressing on social media that I've been seeing of like, it's an embracing of femininity that has sort of been downplayed or poo-pooed, I think, through the years of feminism, as like, well, if you're doing pink and femininity, then you can't be a feminist, you can't be strong, you can't be blah blah. Like there's sort of this delineation between the two, like, oh, you're unserious if you're into Barbie or if you're into things like that. And this was a moment for people to realize, like, oh, I have been repressing this thing that I actually liked as a kid, and it's okay if I like that in certain instances, and we can go along with that. So,
you sure you didn't see the movie, Wes? Brian, is he not hitting the nail on the head right now? About some of the stuff in the
Daily
movie?
Podcast. So I think, did you like this movie? I didn't end up seeing it yet. I may try to go see it, or at least when it comes out on streaming or something, that I'll rent it on Amazon or something. Did you end up liking this movie? Brian, let's get your thoughts first, since you were kind of on the fence there.
Yeah, I liked it. It was a good movie. Like part of it is the hype. Just the fact that it was really difficult for me to find a screening with seats available to go and watch this. Kind of made a difference. Like,
yeah,
like I haven't been to,
you're part of something.
Yeah. I haven't been to a movie theater feeling that, like, okay, now the whole world is on this. I got to go watch it. I got to be part of the droves to see it. I want to see it with, like, all the fans and the hoopla and whatever. And it made for a really fun experience. And, and the movie, despite me worrying that it might devolve into something really generic, Barbie crosses over into the real world, and the real world is different. Like, it still delivers, right? Like that is essentially the plot of the movie. Um, however, what I wasn't expecting was the fact that it is so forward and like boldly about feminism and patriarchy, and they use the word patriarchy like a billion times
They
in the
do.
movie. Characters are saying that word, and it's just so it's like such a mind fuck for me. It's like I can't even believe Mattel okayed all of this, and they poke fun at Mattel as like this corporate monster with a boardroom of all men. Like I just like throughout the entire movie I was just like, I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they got away with this. I can't believe they have this joke in here. And it's like in a lot of ways it felt like online culture, people talking about these issues online, but it coming to the surface in a movie packaged in a very funny way, and like doing the most outlandish things with it for both humor and for satire. And that's a great combination. There's so few other movies like that, and so few movies like that where people show up for that thing specifically. So all of that was a very like pleasant surprise, and it was an enjoyable like couple hours. And I felt like I was part of the culture.
I did see a little trailer or something or a snippet where she says like, "Oh, my heels are flat," and all the ladies are like, that gag did make me laugh. I thought that was pretty.
It's
funny.
even funnier in context of like the larger context of that joke is even better, dude. That's
nice. All right, so Savon, you went in expecting to like it. Did it live up to your expectations? Did you end up walking away thinking, "Yeah, I like that"?
it was beyond my hype, honestly.
Oh,
I knew it was gonna be a satire. I knew
beyond the hype.
I knew it was gonna be a satire. I knew it was gonna be funny.
That's his album, that debut album coming out next month, y'all.
What?
Beyond the hype.
Yeah, beyond the hype. But I'm saying, like, I was excited already about the premise. I was like, okay, it's gonna be a good satire. It's gonna be a good parody. It's gonna be a funny movie. I was excited about the casting of like, oh wow, across the board, these are all very talented actors who have range and frankly, who I think have good comedic chops. Like any of them in a funny role, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna laugh. And so I went in expecting that, and it just delivered.
Who else
and
is in
some.
it besides Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling?
Issa Rae, Shima. Is it Shima?
Simu Liu,
Thank you. I just don't want to butcher the man's name.
Shang-Chi.
And then just a bunch of stop. We did this exact bit in the movie thing of that man. But yeah, Will Ferrell's in it, and then just a bunch of other. The guy who plays Gravik
from Secret.
The guy who plays Gravik in Secret Invasion is one of the Kins. And it's
Whoa.
also
And he's
one of
kind
the
of a- he's a
hilarious.
Mimbo.
He's hilarious.
Is he?
Yes.
Well, all the
He didn't
Kens are.
Yeah.
He didn't get to show off his comedic chops in.
Yeah, exactly. And in
in
this
Secret
show,
Invasion.
he is hilarious, which is really props
that's
to the
awesome.
actors and the script, frankly, to put them in these amazing situations. But yeah, I mean, everybody in the movie was just really was funny into their role, like played their roles well and were really, really funny. So what made it what made the hype get lived up to for me, and I think Brian, you kind of articulated best, was that the movie was, I knew it'd be funny. I did not think I was going to get such an unapologetically forward feminist movie, and that how it talked about those themes. It wasn't just like an implied, there were so many jokes that they're leaving nothing to the imagination. They're making it clear what their joke is. Like at the end, there's a joke of the Kins getting to join the Barbie Land Supreme Court, but they start as like circuit courts. And then the joke is like, well, the Kins had to start somewhere, and with time, they'd have as much power in Barbie Land as women do in the real world. And I lost my shit. I was like, wow. No matter how you interpret that joke, it's hilarious. And like, there's no unfunny version of that joke, because either way, it made its point. But the whole movie is just filled with jokes like that.
I'm surprised there hasn't been then a big like Fox News conservative, you think backlash.
Right, I
I
promise
think
you,
it's
there
so
is.
popular that it's hard to though, right?
And the other thing is, and I can't speak for what maybe more
But it
conservative
seems like
women
they could have
are.
done that early, like right when they started figuring out that this was going to be anti-patriarchy, pro-feminism. That a lot of Fox News people would have just jumped on it and been like, "Ma, ma, 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 ma."
I mean, I don't subject myself to that stuff, so maybe they did. But regardless, funny movie, self-aware. Again, Wes, some of the things that you talked about in our summer episode, right? Of oh, this movie should have came out 20 years ago when people still bought Barbies. Like the whole cultural relevance of Barbie is one of the leading themes of the movie. And this again goes to Brian's point of, yeah, this is a Barbie movie, but this movie was made by very, very, very self-aware people. And this wasn't
That's
just
important,
yeah,
right?
and this wasn't just them patting themselves on the back or shilling for their own product. There was a lot of self-critique, like including of the Barbie brand and what Barbie represents, the duality of this character can represent women being able to be anything, and that's like and that in itself being awesome. Because even like in the opening sequence, there's lots of Barbies of all different body types and lifestyles, and some people are in, wheelchairs. Like they leaned into that heavy, but it doesn't change the real world portion, right? When the daughter absolutely dumps on what Barbie represents and says, "Oh, you represent, lack of representation and body image issues and all this other stuff." And the movie reconciles both those things as being true, and that's okay. But that takes a lot of skillful writing and intention. And this could have been just a little cheap, cheesy movie with a half-assed director and script that could have maybe made some bread. But a lot of love and care was put. This movie was made with a lot of heart. And even me as someone who, I didn't play with Barbie, I played with Hot Wheels. But man, there were so many deep cuts.
That movie's coming, by the way.
Hell yeah, I'll watch it. But there was still so many Barbie deep cuts that were clearly, if you were someone who was a fan of Barbie growing up, the cultural deep cuts were really, really good. And that alone is like, okay, the fan service is there. So even if you didn't grow up with Barbie like me, it's funny and you can see, oh, this is an inside joke. But God forbid you actually played with Barbie. Man, this whole movie is just one long nostalgia trip, which, again, I think that's good movie making. And so even if I don't directly appreciate some of those jokes, I can appreciate that they're there, and that also elevates the movie for me. But when it's all said and done, I was laughing my ass off. I just was laughing a lot. Like multiple times. I'm just like, oh man, these people
was
really
the theater laughing?
Oh yeah, the whole theater.
Oh
was,
yeah.
The theater, everyone was cracking up.
That's always funny.
Yeah. We were
they had deep cut characters like Alan, who's played by Michael Cera, who's like Ken's long forgotten best friend, and like apparently in the original packaging his selling point was like he fits Ken's clothes, and that's something that Michael Cera like says like a couple times through the movie. They had I forget the name of this Barbie, maybe Skipper or something,
the one who like
starts as a kid but grows up, and if you like move her arm, you can pump her arm to inflate her breasts as she grows older. So like that was brought, and apparently
these are real discontinued Barbies.
Yeah,
it's a
Anna
joke.
remembers that doll.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Like a pooping dog,
the pregnant friend,
the pregnant friend that nobody wants to remember.
Yeah, like they poke fun at all of their really bad, failed, problematic, or discontinued Barbie products too, which. Even if you didn't get that it's a discontinued, they still made the joke in the movie to where you still can appreciate, oh wow, they're really doing their Barbie history homework on this. They didn't just take the name and slap some characters in their roles and make a film. But yeah, this is just a very well made, like even if this movie isn't for you or you don't like it, you can't say that heart and effort and love wasn't put into the production of it.
That's
it shows top to bottom.
Yeah.
The movie ran low on pink. Like the world ran low on its pink supply because of all the pink they used for the movie and the marketing. Like the world's pink supply actually was like, hey yo, like y'all, we low. You're using the world's pink. Chill out with that shit.
Yeah, when we talk, like I think it's important to like talk about the contrast that Barbie has as nostalgia bait and like just taking like a random IP and making a movie out of it. Like how different this was compared to like the Super Mario Bros. Movie or even the Lego movie, there's that Battleship movie that came out a long time ago. I mean, like the Lego movie was amazing, but it was not trying to tackle anything hard, and it was generally a family-friendly movie. Like, Barbie is kind of even though it's PG-13, I think it's really quite meant for adults, right? Or meant for like
teens,
mature teens. Yeah.
This is not a kids
and
movie.
it's trying to have this conversation about like what is its meaning in the culture, like where is the culture at.
That's not necessarily a knock on Lego. You're just saying like this tackles some grander themes than a Lego movie did.
I'm sorry I offended you
right
by bringing up your beloved Lego movie.
Barbie went for a dunk
Well,
when a layup would have sufficed. Is I think the best way to kind of put it. Like that's the way. That's how I describe it. Like to Brian's point, this movie could have been easy nostalgia bait where they do the bare minimum, throw in characters, put popular people in a role, and the movie probably just still makes money hand over fist. And they leaned completely away from that. This movie was not nostalgia. Like there was some nostalgia bait elements, but throughout the core of the movie, it's not about nostalgia. Like there's nostalgia jokes in there, but like that is not the heart and soul of what makes this movie good and appealing, which I think is part of why me and Brian enjoyed it so much. Like you don't have to be a Barbie stan growing up to appreciate what this movie did well, because that's really just the medium through which they tell the story, not what the story itself is totally about. Which, God, like I said, shit was dope.
I never saw Super Mario Brothers. Was that just like not? Not it.
No, it's a fun, good movie.
I enjoyed it,
but
it's kind of empty.
Okay.
It did what it was supposed to do. It didn't try and break new ground. Barbie legit went into uncharted territories of like, hey man, we're gonna get real ambitious with what points we try and make with this movie, and points that were ambitious enough to where they could have did this wrong and the movie's awful, but they stuck the landing and did those themes very well in a way most movies just straight up won't and don't.
Beautiful. What was your favorite subversion they pulled? Brian.
Yeah, Brian, you go.
Subversion?
You know?
I mean, I think like the entire Ken storyline was kind of amazing. Like, I was not expecting.
Don't spoil it. All right.
I'm going to spoil it.
No, we don't.
You're going to spoil it?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, we got to talk
because
about the movie.
everyone has seen this movie except for you, Wes.
Oh, okay. Go.
I mean, like Ken going on this, joining Barbie into the real world, and then discovering the patriarchy in that. Because in Barbie Land, Kens are sidekicks, right?
Yeah.
Ken's entire existence
depends on
Barbie, right? But then he realizes in the real world that like, oh, the Kens are in charge in the real world. The men are in charge, and he's like, that's awesome, because he wants a bigger thing to do in life than just wait around for Barbie, who doesn't pay him any attention. So like that whole storyline just becoming such a big part of this movie was kind of astounding, and they do some really hilarious things with it because because him going so hard over the patriarchy it shows how absurd patriarchy is, right? And like how ludicrous all this stuff is and how nonsensical it is. But like, he goes to some really crazy extremes, like dressing like Sylvester Stallone and,
he has like a gold chain, a mink coat, a shit ton of gold watches, a headband. Like he's
ultimate masculinity.
He becomes obsessed with horses. Like,
he kind of looks like Ric Flair by the end of the movie.
Dude, is it bad that I think his fit was so hard? Is it bad that like in the movie they were like, I look dumb, and the women are like, you do look dumb, and the guy's like, you look awesome, and I'm in the theater like, I think he looks kind of awesome. But maybe that's just, I don't know, maybe yeah, Brian.
You got that toxic drip.
Yeah, that toxic drip was on 10. I was like, oh yeah, I want his drip when I grow up.
I like that on an all male podcast that we're doing right here. We pick out the Ken as the best part of the movie.
No, I mean, no, it's the most surprising part of the movie, right? No, but I think like
I'm hearing it.
It's a mirror, right? It's a mirror.
Yeah.
But like the real best part of the movie was when all the Kens get together. They're doing a very toxic masculine, like all out brawl with each other that just turns into a dance performance. Like Gene Kelly in a huge sound stage dance performance, surreal environment. And them doing like goofy choreography with each other, with Simu Liu, with Shang-Chi and Gravik alongside Ryan Gosling, with their like winning empty grins, dancing. Like that was just phenomenal.
They even had the black blonde Ken. Apparently, that my friend who I saw it with, she said like, oh, they had the black Ken with the blonde hair. That was a real Ken. Like even little stuff like that are just the attention to detail. But no, I mean
Cisco.
Yeah, like Cisco, but like before Cisco.
All right.
When I don't know why the hell they just had black dudes with blonde, whatever. Yeah, I mean Ken is definitely one.
Doesn't want
not
blonde
for
hair, I guess.
good reasons.
Yeah. Ken is definitely one of the surprising parts of the movie, and that's a big subversion. I think for me the other big subversion was that to Brian's point, I didn't expect this movie to be so critical of the actual Barbie brand and how characters view it, because they set the movie up to think that, oh, it's this young daughter who needs to, who appreciates and likes Barbie. And right when you meet this daughter, she's like a very Gen Z, like she calls Barbie a fascist, breaks her down, like really tears into her unapologetically. And low-key is going hard on her the entire movie up and towards the end. But they really kind of set it up. You don't think Barbie's going to get dumped on in terms of what she represents as hard as she does throughout the movie by certain characters. And again, it was, to me, it was okay, they're not just in this for their brand and ego. They're okay with telling a great story if that great story, part of it means, hey, we have to be a little bit self-deprecating or just acknowledge like, hey, we effed up a little bit in the past. Again, like them really doing multiple, not just one tap, one note, multiple bits about discontinued Barbies that were clearly problematic or not a good idea. Is just, that's the self-awareness that again, makes the movie just a little bit more appealing, a little bit better. I want to say,
so who's the next problematic company to greenlight one of these and it just blow up in their face? Like, is Enron, if Enron was still around, would they'd be like greenlighting the next Enron satire parody? I think it could work. Enron's not around anymore. Yeah, they all folded.
I couldn't tell you that, but I'm trying to think of what are some of the other really good subversions. Like, actually, another good subversion was frankly at the end of the movie with the movie's resolution of Barbie world not going back to the way that it used to be. And, I guess I just didn't expect throughout all the stuff in the movie that Barbie was still recognized, like with Ken, hey, bro, you got to have an identity outside of me and our existence. And it wasn't just obviously a lot of the movie was about Barbie's own growth and growing beyond and learning who you are and what you want to be. I didn't expect they were going to mirror that to Ken in the same way, to where they still want to shift the larger status quo. Like they could have not done that, and I would have totally have like been like, yeah, I get it. But they really did leave room for like, hey, the Barbies are definitely going to be able to change and be able to grow and have. Although it's not like a lot of the Barbies outside of Margot Robbie's needed to have a bunch of specific character growth because they were doing well, but some of that stuff it ended up being let's still work together and for the larger picture type of ending that was a little bit more surprising than I thought.
Yeah, in a way, the movie is pushing the Barbie toys to be something greater too, right? It's like the movie's saying like, we want this out of this IP, and like Mattel better be listening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of like a great subversion, right? It's like,
yeah.
The movie makers had their own feelings.
Gotcha. I wonder how that went behind the scenes in terms of like how much Mattel wanted this to be like that, how much they wanted to approve it, how much they didn't want it to be like this, and like how, like whether the director won out, if there were any other compromises that they had to make. Because it is like a conundrum, right? Like if your movie is designed to sort of be a vehicle to push more toy sales, at the end of the day, how do you do that and not completely like torch the brand? If you want to make a satire, that's, I think,
authenticity.
Like Savon said, that's a fine line you have to draw. But
I think people appreciate authenticity, and I think this stuff.
Sure, but that doesn't mean Mattel was going to appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think Mattel recognized that authenticity is what'll go the longest way, because the fact they even let this movie be PG-13 shows that they were willing to give them a really long leash about what they were going to let them get away with. Because if they really didn't want them to do X, Y, Z, they could have just said, hey, yo, you can do what you want, but keep it PG. But the movie starts off with them making a joke about having a beach off. And I'll beat you off right here, bro. I'll beat you both off. Because they're talking, the Kens are like,
I couldn't believe they had that.
The Kens are like posturing with one another, like, sizing each other up, squawking over the Barbies. And they're like, we have a beach off right here. Because the Ryan Gosling's Ken is called Beach Ken. For the record, does not mean he can swim or surf. He just likes to exist on the beach, and they really lean into that joke a lot too. But point is, like, that alone means
this sounds like a movie I would like.
It's a good movie.
All right, maybe I'll have to go see it. Maybe I'll take Jen.
Yeah,
Jen has actually been pretty negative about it too. She's been like, I just don't understand why there's such a big deal about it, and I'm like,
because people get excited about shit. What kind of question is that?
Well,
the hype machine is at work.
She was never into Barbies. She's just like, I don't get why people are like so into it. And before it had come out, like afterwards, I think that's different, right? But nobody had seen the movie. So I was like, how can you be into this movie without having seen it,
The
and all
same
you're
way
getting
people
is
are
like this
into
marketing.
everything before it comes out. What are we doing here?
I'm not saying I totally agree with her premise of her question, but she was just skeptical. Basically, she was just skeptical. Like, this movie is just a movie, right? Like, it's not a thing. But
I think a big reason
sounds
why
like it's deeper than that.
I think a big reason why it took off, and we talked about this before I think we started recording, was that like the whole Barbenheimer thing, like
Oh yeah,
exploded,
we didn't talk about that.
right? Just the fact that these two movies were coming out on the same weekend and were diametrically opposed to one another.
Very different types of movies.
Meant
Opposite
that,
ends
like,
of the spectrum.
people were asked to make a choice, like which
Yeah.
one represents you.
If you could
And
only see one this weekend,
And
Team
so,
Cap,
and then
Team Iron
there
Man.
were fence riders who were like, "Oh, I got to do the double feature." Like, and then the question was like, "Which one do you see first?" Right.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that really took off on the internet, and that's
that's
big
true, right?
part
Because
of
everybody's
why.
wearing like their pink and stuff, and so like they're letting you know, like, I'm not an Oppenheimer. It's like you get to like, by choosing Barbie, you also get to say I'm not seeing Oppenheimer, and that kind of feels good too, right? Like, I'm voting against, candidate X.
I'm
you know.
choosing hope and glee over doom and gloom.
Yeah. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Felt like when I first voted
That's
for
interesting.
Obama.
It's like, oh, I want this fun, silly summertime movie. Turns out it sounds like they didn't actually get that. They got like a silly movie, but they also got like a very smart, very intellectual movie as well. So kudos to Gerwig for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Should we move it along
Yeah.
to our second part of the double feature?
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing about the Barbie movie.
You
Y'all.
love Barbie, man.
Barbie!
I did, man. I might go see that joint again.
Hey!
One thing I enjoyed with
Still hasn't seen Into the Spider-Verse.
How you gonna tell me? Yes, I have. I saw that weeks ago, like months ago.
You did?
Yes, get out my face. Now
Dude,
you
we
just
saw
making
that
stuff
years
up.
ago. That felt like a decade ago at this point.
Did you watch Into the Spider-Verse before you saw Across the Spider-Verse?
Saw it after.
All right.
Look,
Did you like Into the Spider-Verse?
Stop! Hold on, I was trying to say something about Barbie. Just to wrap up with Barbie, one of the better things about the movie is that it does, again, it has heavy themes of masculinity and feminism, which again I appreciate. I guess what I actually no, I think I'd just be rehashing something we talked about a little bit earlier. But I thought they did the gender themes well, and while some of the stuff towards males might be considered, oh, males were portrayed in like a poor light in this movie, it still gave lots of, I think, a light at the end of the tunnel for the Kens at the end who were still portrayed in maybe a more not antagonistic, but they clearly weren't the smart story pushing characters. I think they still got like a solid ending that I think if you're a man watching this movie, there's still something you can take away from that, even if this movie as a whole is still geared towards more so women. Which, so for anybody who hasn't seen the movie yet, I say, especially if you have strong opinions about those types of themes, go in with an open mind, because there is a lot you can take from it, even if men are still a part of the butt of a lot of the jokes and slapstick shit, which is fine because the jokes are funny.
It is okay. All right. Oppenheimer, and Brian, you're the only one that actually saw both, so you're the star of this show, bro. So we
High
finally
five, Brian,
get
baby.
a pink tie, yeah, pink bowler
Pink
hat, or something.
fedora.
Nice. We finally get a new Christopher Nolan movie. Was his last one Tenet, Brian? Is that right?
Indeed.
So it's been quite a while since we've had a Nolan movie. We got a lot of hype about how he shot this one in IMAX, how they're showing it in 70 millimeter, which is, for those of you who don't know, 70 millimeter film is just like giant film, which can project a huge, either very high resolution or it can project a very large screen, which there's actually very few theaters like that in North America that can actually show these movies. I think there's like 26 or something that are showing it across the country. And just like maybe 50 or 70 or something like that across the world. So it's limited in terms of like where you can see this just giant format. Anyways,
Impossible to get tickets. So hard.
Impossible. Okay. Did you?
So
you didn't
hard
snag
to
one.
get it on 70 millimeter IMAX. It's so hard to get tickets. I only
Okay.
saw it on 70 millimeter, and for that,
But
I
not
had to
70 millimeter film.
No, 70 millimeter
saying?
film. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're only like there are IMAX theaters, and then there's also 70 millimeter projectors, and then there's the combination of the two, right?
Gotcha.
So like you know, there's only a few theaters out there, and you gotta you gotta elbow yourself to get some tickets, man. I
Yeah.
had to see this movie at 9:30 in the morning
Oh, that's perfect
on a
movie
Sunday.
time.
I woke
That's
up at
perfect
like
time.
8 a.m. No, it was terrible. I'm so tired. It's like, oh my god.
I know, me and Savon are thinking, look at how much day of the day you have
Yeah,
left
I'm like, yo, you
afterwards.
get to watch that and have a whole day after. You tripping.
I'm with you, Savon.
Yeah.
High five.
I
Perfect time
just
to see a
wanted to
movie.
take a
Team
nap
Batman.
after. Good lord.
All right. So out the gates, you're walking out of the theater, 70 millimeter. You just saw in all of its high format or high resolution, glory. How did you feel?
Oh my god, like I felt like it was like such an experience. It was like glorious to behold all
Yeah.
of it. But at the same time, I was also like, oh, this is a biopic. This is like a straight up like talky biopic, which I was not expecting.
Oh, see, that's what I was expecting.
And it dragged out a little bit. And so like I really enjoyed it, and I think everybody should watch this movie. I really do. And I think it should be seen in 70 millimeter. Because
Okay.
it's like just like a phenomenal way to watch movies, especially because they made it that way.
Yeah.
But
Can you think about? Wait, can
Christopher
I ask
Nolan
you
makes
to
me
think
want
about
certain
this?
things. What?
What about the way they shot it, or the way it was composed, or whatever? Do you think really makes use of that 70 millimeter format? Because I was watching it, I don't think I particularly saw anything that I would have been like, oh, like that's where it really comes into play. But I also saw it on like a regular screen. You don't have to answer right now, but maybe marinate on that unless you have an answer right now.
I mean, a lot of it is the just like the amount of detail, right? And the amount of immersion that's available in 70 millimeter just feels to me so much greater than a regular movie watching experience. Like I was like almost cheek to cheek with Cillian Murphy playing Oppenheimer.
Cillian.
And just like the way that they frame his
Very
face,
sunken cheeks, very prominent cheekbones, that man.
I mean, he's a scarecrow for a reason. and so like when the camera is like right on his face, fixating on him
a lot.
And especially like after they do the first test of the atom bomb of Trinity, and like the whole crowd is cheering for him, and you just see like the particles around his face and like his eyes just wrecked with like contemplation and maybe even guilt about what he's just done. Like it just like puts you in that moment in a way that I think is doesn't come across in regular 35 millimeter. And then you have everything else, right? Like you have all the bomb footage, the explosions, the particles moving, and then the expansive vistas of New Mexico, which just looks so gorgeous.
It does.
On that,
I wanted to go
format.
to New Mexico now.
Yeah, like exactly. Like you just wanted to be at all these places because you kind of felt like you already were. So I think that alone is an achievement, and I would, the 70 millimeter used to be a thing like back in the 60s or 50s, 40s even, and it's a great format. I'm glad it's not dying. I hope more films make use of it.
It's a technically tricky format to both shoot on and to project. You just need miles and miles of actual space. Within the projection room, the technicians who are projecting, the projectionists have to actually be good at like, making the film go without tangling and without, wrecking it. Cause it's, it's so expensive. And then you just need equipment cause it's so heavy and big, and, you need enough light to power. It's like a whole technical thing that I was watching YouTube on.
It's
It's pretty cool.
And so what's the benefit of this again?
It's just bigger. So
More
the bigger your film is,
bigger.
the more information you can like pack onto this film. And so as the light passes through it, you're just getting more clarity, more actual detail on the screen. So it's just it's like when people want to make their TVs like 85 inches and 4K or 8K, it's the same thing. You're going to be able to see quote unquote more. It doesn't change the story. It doesn't change those kinds of things. It just changes the visuals a little bit.
And this is why Christopher Nolan fans are fucking nerds.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here like,
that's who
word?
likes these movies.
I'm like, so they got all this high def camera stuff, but like people ain't fighting, they just talking.
Well, that was kind of the surprise for me. So like Nolan, For those that don't know, he made Inception, he made Interstellar, he made Tenet, Dunkirk, Batman
Batman!
Begins, The Dark Knight, right? Like all
Dark
these
Knight.
great
Batman.
like action movies, or action movies, really.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of thinking, like, yes, I know this is about Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, but I thought there would be like some World War II stuff going on in here. I thought there, like
Nope.
we would see other things to contextualize the atom bomb, but
Nope.
zero.
Got
None
it.
of that.
Nope.
It is all scientists, all laboratories.
and personal relationships.
Were the sex scenes necessary?
Yeah.
Arguably, yes.
Maybe.
Yeah. And
There's a lot though.
Yeah. I
It's
was
just
very
Florence Pugh
surprised.
sitting in a chair, boobs hanging out. Cillian Murphy sitting in a chair, naked but legs crossed, just chilling for minutes at a time, just talking to each other.
There's definitely some riding going on.
Yep.
In a tiny office with people watching. So
Because the people were like in an isolated thing, so I guess they couldn't really interact with other folks because of the nature of the project. So that's why all the relationships was important.
They could though. That was weird. He left the little base they were at, Los Alamos. He left a couple of times to.
He
just,
left
like,
to go
do
have
his
an
thing.
affair.
Yeah, that too.
Jeez.
So they were allowed to leave, which seems like, I mean, I get it, but also weird. So I walked away from this movie. Actually, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I had kind of mixed feelings about it, and we can get into those in a minute. I'm actually, Savon, I think because you didn't see this movie, you should leave the question.
Whole
Were we on the
savage.
same page
yeah,
here?
Yeah, I was just like, wait a second. Is it?
All right,
It's time
so
for
start us
savvy.
off. Where are we going next?
So we get a
Number two,
we
maybe?
get a story that was very much, it's dialogue, it's character driven, it's about the atomic bomb, but that's like the backdrop of the story. So like all that stuff, what worked and what didn't for this movie. We talked about the filming, the acting, but like what worked and what didn't work.
So for me, and I'm gonna have a very different, I think, response than Brian. I didn't know what to expect from this movie, other than I thought maybe it'd be like about his life or about like what he was doing in terms of how to make the atomic bomb, things like that. And I heard mixed things going in. I think I saw a social media review that was like, it's just a lot of talking, and I could see why people maybe aren't enjoying this movie that much. But there's a lot to like about it. The intensity of so many of the scenes, either emotional intensity or like the stakes of it, the sound was intense. I don't know. That's just the way I would describe this movie. Is there was just like a lot of intensity.
Yes.
It wasn't necessarily stressful. Like it's not suspenseful or stressful. It's just intense. There's a lot about like the way that science is conducted at that point in time, like, and math, that they're just like, they're talking, they're trying to figure things out, they're problem solving. They go back, they connect with other scientists in their field. I love that part about it. There's debate, there's mixed feelings going on. The feelings were actually some of the more subtle and I think hard to pinpoint things. So like Brian said, he does set off the atomic bomb in a test. It was considered successful, but there's a small amount of talk, consideration, and just focus on people's faces as they're contemplating and talking about whether this is a justified thing. And I don't know how much of that conversation was really happening at the time. I'm sure there was a lot of outside people in the United States or non-scientists talking about like, this is wrong, blah, blah, we're pacifists. There was that undercurrent at the time, but that doesn't really come across in Oppenheimer's story here in this movie. And I don't know whether he was conflicted or not in real life. It doesn't seem like he was. He was more on the side of like, this is just kind of a necessity. And if we have the bomb, we're going to be in a position to control whether other people get it. We're going to be in a position to dictate terms moving forward in terms of how this stuff gets used. And he's very clear that like, this is not something that we should be doing a lot of ever. Right. Like, and that's part of the movie as well, especially towards the end. But, I don't know. I would call this like, to me, it felt like an impressionist painting. I don't know if you agree with that, Brian, that like there's broad strokes, there's feelings, there's like these moments where you're getting an insight into his thought process or a colleague's thought process. Relationships, you kind of get strokes of here, strokes of there. His the person that he has this affair with, he had relationships before, but you don't really get into like their day-to-day. You don't get into their deeper conversations. Even his wife, like they have one hookup in the beginning and then he's his wife and she's pregnant, but you don't really get to see like what makes them work. Really, you get to see what makes them doesn't work sometimes. But then there's these moments where like she comes to his support, and so like there's this feeling to me when I'm watching the movie. I'm like, I can't feel like I can grasp this movie. I can't grasp what it's about, because it's kind of just about a lot of different things, and you just sort of get a sense of things rather than an actual spelling out of it. And for me, that's kind of frustrating because I like to like know what it is, right? But like in this movie, I feel like you do know things, but it's also a lot of like you're just getting feelings of things and senses of things. So Savon asked me if this was more complicated than it needed to be, like, and I would say for me it was, and I can appreciate if other people like Brian or other viewers thought no, like this is what it should have been. So I don't know, but for me, yeah, it felt like he tried to complicate it and add in these other things that, like, there's an actual threat. There's a threat of the Nazis looming. That is a big enough like moment of like focus for me as an audience member that I didn't necessarily need all of that other stuff. Brian?
I think like you're right that it is kind of impressionistic. It's almost as if you were Oppenheimer on your deathbed and you had flashes of your entire life. The movie feels like that in a way because in a very Nolan-esque thing to do, rather than telling a straight biography of this guy, he tells it in 3 different timelines, right? And so those 3 timelines are happening simultaneously throughout the movie, or not simultaneously, but we're cutting back and forth between like early 1940s and then late or mid 1950s and then like early 1960s. So those 3 timelines are all informing how we understand the character and the ramifications of what's going on. And to me, I think that's a way more interesting movie. Was it necessary though? Like the 3rd timeline that focuses around a confirmation hearing of a cabinet member played by Robert Downey Jr., which was like cool to see Iron Man like not
looking very
being
old
Iron Man.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't really care about that thread that much, but it did the important thing of telling some like interesting ramifications of the atom bomb. And so like Wes, to your point, you're saying like, oh, the Nazis are enough. I mean, the Nazis are kind of not even, that's not even the threshold that this movie is worried about. This movie is worried about nuclear war and fallout and weapons of mass destruction and like how that has changed the world entirely, right? And so I think that's why having all the timelines and complexities make it a more interesting movie. It's like, oh shit, like this is a turning point for human civilization and we done fucked up. Like this is bad. Like they even, the scientists, when they're debating,
and it was inevitable, right? Like they made it clear that it was inevitable. Someone was going to figure it out.
Right. And so like that's part of the debate with the scientific community. And I love the fact that they point out like while they're researching this thing, they're not 100% certain that it won't just ignite all the atmosphere in the world and basically explode the entire planet.
The one like comedic
so like
plot point of the movie
that that is that messes with your head. And and so like they have all these back and forth arguments that are very scientific or they're very political, and they have a lot of nuance in them. Like at face value, maybe they don't seem like the most urgent, they don't seem melodramatic, right? That's the thing. Like the way that we normally think of drama, this is kind of a procedural movie. It's like, this is how science happens, this is how politics happens, and this is how those 2 things merge, right? And so I think the movie does that extremely well. Like very few other movies can do that. And so like when they're in Washington DC in like a confined little office space with all these policymakers and Oppenheimer, and they're talking about whether or not they're going to drop the atom bomb on Japan, and like which cities in Japan are going to get it, and like how many bombs are we going to drop, and is it even necessary at this stage in the war because Japan's going to surrender anyway. And like this policymaker is like,
And the Nazis were defeated at that point.
I'm gonna cross Kyoto off this list of potential targets because I had a honeymoon there and it's a lovely city. Like, so let's do Hiroshima instead. Like, stuff like that is just, it's like mind-boggling.
That's bonkers, right?
And it's intense. To me, it's like so intense. And the movie, like, because it's whip snapping back and forth between all these timelines and all these events happening, like you feel the pressure and the excitement and the danger of all those things that are happening. And I think that makes it a much more palatable movie than to just like, okay, we're just going to tell the straight chronology of, you know, the scientist and his life story. So like, to me, it's really kind of like, it's about, you know, it's about that. It's about, you know, what it means to be in the nuclear world. But then, and then the other thing that to me was interesting and new was that it's also very much about McCarthyism and the witch hunt that happens after. Like that I knew nothing about that at all. Like Oppenheimer's a lefty, you know, has like a lot of communist connections.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that. He was because that was just a whole defamation campaign for him historically, right?
Yeah,
that was what everybody was just like,
you
all right,
know more about it than I do.
Yeah, because like, oh, it's the Cold War. All right, bet. Well, if you're not with us, then you with the Soviets, and that's an easy way to just like, you could throw that card out and ruin somebody's career. Pretty low difficulty.
Yeah,
and it did.
Yeah, and it did, right? while he was on a campaign to like prevent nuclear proliferation.
Yeah, because he just recognized, hey, yo, this shit dangerous. This is, you know, this. He saw the destruction of the bomb, all this stuff, and he's just like, hey, yo, okay, we did it, chill, Cold War. All right, well, if you're not with us, okay, yeah, that makes sense. This feels like this would be a good, like...
It didn't leave him with any, like, leg to stand on, though, right? Like, he's the one responsible, or one of the people responsible for building it, for making it. It's hard to have some sense of credibility coming out of that experience and being like, cool, now that we've done that, nobody else should do that again. Right, like,
but I think
you know, I don't blame other people who are listening to him and just like not really giving it credence, you know, because it's like, well, you made it, so you obviously believed in it in some way, you know.
I feel like it's a very science kind of thing, right? Like you explore this idea, you came to a conclusion, and now that conclusion has informed your rationale, right? So like,
yeah, for sure.
You know, maybe he could evolve, right? He could evolve his opinion on it. And I think,
yeah,
to me, like that's part of the takeaway is like science is moving in this direction, but maybe history, politics, culture want people to behave in another way for other reasons, right? They want things to just be like, you know, straight up. It's kind of like the pandemic, right? Like, you know, we didn't know a lot. The scientists didn't know a lot. And so rules kept changing. And people are like, we just want like a definitive thing. Like they said this, the opposite a month ago, and now it's this. And
right. And they thought that was a way to discredit like scientists or scientific process. And it's like,
yeah,
well,
but
that's how it works, man.
Yeah, we're learning.
Just trial and error. We're figuring it out as we go. We know as much as y'all do.
Yeah. Well, they knew a little bit more.
We know more, but like we're figuring this out
people
as we
didn't
go.
Like that. Yeah. Funny. All right, what's next, Savon?
All right, so, man, a lot of opinions. See, it just felt like this would have been a really dope book. I mean, I guess it's based off a book.
It's based
on
a book.
Yeah. But just give me
the book I hear is arguably better.
Ooh.
The timeline stuff is kind of turning me off, but it is what it is. Nolan, still one of obviously the most respected directors of our time. How does this compare to prior work for you? Like, what does this fit in the Nolan verse?
Yeah, so I am not a Christopher Nolan like diehard or anything.
So Brian, that boy lit up when he said on that one.
I love Nolan.
He was just like,
I haven't seen
Nolan.
But hey, it's hard to beat Dark Knight. Just the performance from Heath Ledger alone, but you know the way that story unfolds, and Inception in terms of it being, I think it feels like the most Christopher Nolan-y type of movie. Hard to beat the way that took over every conversation in that time, right? Like people wanted to talk about Inception for a really long time and try and figure out like, what was your experience? How did you interpret this, right? Because it did leave a lot of that.
What happens to the top at the end?
Yeah,
Does
right.
it
Like
fall or does it keep spinning?
that's what I want to know. So it's hard to beat those things. But what I will say is I think I enjoyed the fact that Nolan actually had to stay somewhat bounded by history, right? Like he couldn't go too far away from what actually happened here. He's not in his own sandbox that he made where any rule applies, where he can just bend reality, right? The only bending of reality is Cillian Murphy's character or Oppenheimer's perception of reality is being changed sometimes, right? When he's going through depressive moods or his anxiety is being highlighted, but we're not going through moving staircases or cities flopping over each other or bouncing through time or bouncing through reality, things like that. And I think it forced him to like work within a parameter that actually probably helped in some way and was kind of a new challenge for him. So I enjoyed that. I don't know that this to me didn't beat my enjoyment of The Dark Knight or Inception. But that's where I am. I don't know that I've seen it. I think I saw Memento a really long time ago. I did see Dunkirk. That was fine. So I don't know.
You're killing me, Wes.
I don't know. Brian, what do you think?
How dare you?
You think you mad, Brian?
Clearly
I didn't
a
know what
Nolan
half those
stan.
were.
Yeah, you're a Nolan fan.
I'm a Nolan stan. Let it be known.
You got his Christopher Nolan shrine in the closet.
Dunkirk is a masterpiece. I actually really love.
Very stressful.
I love The Prestige. That's like one of my low key favorites. That's the one with the magicians.
Yeah, the
Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, and they're like rival magicians.
Okay. Yeah, that was the Batman.
No, it's twins. I mean, that's the spoiler.
Okay.
Christian Bale is a twin, and that's how he accomplishes his tricks.
Yeah.
And Memento like changed how I even thought about movies when I first saw it in like 2000 or 2001 or whenever that was.
Changed little Brian's minds.
So one of the key critiques that Nolan gets, which I think is validated, is that Nolan sometimes prefers high concept, right? Like, to Savon's point, like timelines, like why we got all these timelines? Like he puts layers on sometimes unnecessarily and like makes things overly complicated. Like Tenet's like absurdly complicated. You need diagrams to understand like how it even works. Same thing with Inception and Interstellar. And he does that kind of at the sacrifice of emotion and soul. Like most of the time, like a lot of his characters are kind of thin, right? They're not full soulful human beings. What I appreciate about Oppenheimer is that he for once has like a very emotional movie. Like I felt like was emotional, and I felt like Oppenheimer himself as a character felt very rich and fully drawn. Like, sure, like Cillian Murphy is like very pensive throughout the entire movie, but I mean, I just felt like you could see so many shades of gray and kind of the things that he was dealing with. Like, none of it is very explicit, but to me, it felt like, oh yeah, Oppenheimer himself is this rich human being, and he's complicated, he's conflicted, and I am feeling a lot for this character, both good and bad. And I think for Christopher Nolan, that is an achievement. Like, and it sets this movie apart from like the rest of his work. So I was, I was pleasantly surprised by that, even though there was no action. I wanted some action.
Nice. I
Nice.
wanted to talk about like the fact that there was, I don't know, this movie spent a lot of time in sort of just like gathering phase. There's just a lot of gathering. I mean, there's like, we're building a town, we're doing these things, we're gathering friends, we're gathering, spouses or a spouse.
Animal Crossing of movies.
And what that allowed them to do was, I think, talk about like this struggle and grappling that's happening in terms of intellectually, like how do we solve this problem, how do we solve that problem, and they weren't specific about the solutions. It was just the like, we're having to talk about it, right? And they really made that clear, or Christopher Nolan made that clear. And there was a lot of talking and grappling about like, what is the role of, you know, government, what is the role of science, what is the role of like these weapons, and how do they play into our ability to take care of each other. I know, I think that was like a central theme of the movie, right? Is like, how are we supposed to take care of each other, how are we supposed to take care of the world, and when do you use force, and you know, a little bit about that. And I don't know, it was just like, because Oppenheimer was Jewish, you know, he was very unconflicted about it. He was like, the Nazis are bad, they're systematically killing people in these camps, and they cannot have access to this bomb. They cannot be the team that comes out ahead here at the end of the day. You know, whether this is morally complicated or whether this is, you know, a bad thing, I think he was like, I just have to make peace with, and he doesn't say this, but it's just like, this is something we have to do. Like, it cannot be a thing that the Nazis get to first before us. And that's the end of the story. Like, there is no other room for a discussion until that's the case, right? And so, and then once they do have the bomb, then we can have the discussion. Or once we as Americans have the bomb, then we can have a discussion about whether it's right or wrong in the world. But the Nazis cannot be the first one to have it.
Yeah, force their hand, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's interesting that the movie allows us to be in that space around, like, you know, you can understand the horrific nature of a bomb that can kill tens of thousands of people in 1 second, and over the course of 3 days kill, you know, maybe 100,000. So the movie lets people grapple with that, and also lets you grapple with the fact that, like, in some ways the characters or the people felt like this was necessary, or some people felt this was necessary because of the stakes that were at hand. And then when that stake is taken away, right? So when the Nazis are taken out of power without it, does the program still make sense? Does this pursuit still make sense? And Oppenheimer still says yes, but I think he loses some of the moral, philosophical underpinnings of his argument at that point. So I don't know. I enjoyed that sort of struggle that the movie is forcing us to deal with as well. And with the, you know, power of 80 years of hindsight, right? Of like, oh, well, good thing we didn't use it, but like, also like, yeah, that clearly seems wrong. Like the way that the way that this went down, you know, and like the power of these weapons is incredible, right? And you don't cheer. I don't know, Brian, did you feel happy when the test went off?
I mean, like, that was the best moment in the movie.
No, but like, were you celebrating the way the characters in the movie were celebrating?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely
right.
Because
right?
you're like, oh, this is doomsday.
Yeah, and this is going to be,
they're about to kill a lot of people.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Like, well, we already know that. We already know what it is.
Spoiler alert, they dropped bombs. They dropped 2 of them. Yeah,
they dropped 2 of them. Oh my god.
They spin the block.
So like, I don't know. And so that was the most brilliant, I think, part, right? The lead up to, you're like, I want this to go well for him. He's worked on it this whole thing. They're like, there is a chance that it doesn't work out, because they were still actually arguing about whether their ignition device was going to work. And it works. And you're like, first you're kind of amazed. You're like, holy shit, like that's big. Like, wow, look at all this work that he's done to this point in the movie and his team has done. Like, what an accomplishment. And then you see them cheering and you're like, oh, right? Like, you're just like, oh shit, we're the bad guys.
And then like all the American flag waving stuff. Like, I just felt
and
so
it's on
disgusted.
purpose.
Yeah, like, who wants are we talking about the Nazis and, you know, putting people in camps and violence against their own citizens? How could we possibly have a nationalist country that puts its citizens into camps and commits violence against its own citizens have nuclear weapons? The audacity!
Yeah, well, they don't even talk about internment at all, actually.
Surprise,
and that's
surprise.
probably one of the things that they could have.
Did he talk about what? Did he talk about? Because I was reading an article that talked about how maybe something that wasn't talked about with the building of the bombs historically is that the land they used to build that base was like people got displaced from it. And did you talk about that element?
They talked about it, that it was belonging to the Indians, sort of. They called them Indians. I know that's not what you'd call them today. But they made it seem like it was empty.
Yeah, because I remember reading an article that was about the historical element of actually a lot of indigenous folks got screwed over with the creation of that camp, because it was and one friend who saw the movie told me that they mentioned it like offhand, so maybe that was just a line of dialogue that maybe, I don't know, people don't recall.
He's at the
but,
They're
end.
trying to acknowledge it a little.
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
I heard that was something that they.
I don't
I guess
know.
here's my question: with everything in the movie, do you feel like it whitewashed some of the other elements of this story, or do you think maybe because it's so Oppenheimer focused, that was never going to be a major theme of the story? Or do you feel like they could have done both, where this is still about Oppenheimer and him and as a person, but you can still acknowledge maybe some of the other themes around his actions? For example, like if there's a theme in the movie of, oh, we can't do this because the Germans are this malignant force who are dangerous, but then not acknowledge internment or even the displacement of people's land. Like, do you feel like they could have done that but still told Oppenheimer's story? Or do you just feel like for a movie that's 3 hours plus, something had to go and that's just the direction that they leaned?
Brian.
Yeah, I think the movie knows what it is, right? Which is essentially like a biography of this guy and kind of the tortured nature of his role in history. And so I didn't feel like those blinders were a downfall or a misstep on their part. Like it just felt, that was the perspective that we're getting in the movie. Is like it's really Oppenheimer's. So I didn't mind
Which
it.
is fair.
Much. Yeah.
Yeah, like he wouldn't necessarily have been aware of all of that stuff.
Yeah, maybe he wouldn't have cared, right?
Yeah.
About Japanese internment.
Yeah, it probably wasn't on his radar at that point. All right.
Fair.
What else?
All right, cool. So
Barbenheimer, huh?
Yeah. So I guess now
This is a Barbenheimer episode.
Yeah, that was the last one. So the last bit is just like, all right, Brian, I guess this is a you question. What did you like more, Barbie or Oppenheimer? Bring us home. You saw both. Wes saw one. I saw the
that
other.
Was tough.
If you had to pick,
I had to see
Saw style.
I had to see 3-hour Oppenheimer at 9:30 in the morning, and I don't usually wake up until 12:30.
Jesus, what?
I had to see Barbie at 9:30 at night in a packed theater. This is a tough question.
Like,
What kind of person am I? I don't know. It depends. Ask
do you
me
hate
on
women or do you hate
day.
America?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely hate America. Should we leave it at that?
People go see both. I'll make a note to see Oppenheimer. I'll try and go see
I think you should go. Yeah, I think people should go see both. It's like I'm just in love with movies, man. I love movies, and I just love that there's worthwhile stuff to like go make an appointment to go watch these movies because they're an experience. And I think Barbie's an experience. Like a lot of it has to do with the hype. I wouldn't want to watch it in an empty theater.
Oh, no, that
wouldn't be right.
That was a group experience.
Oppenheimer.
Oh, interesting.
Oppenheimer, like I wouldn't want to watch it, on my TV on a set with a sound bar. Like I need the big experience. It's not the same without it. So, have at it, world.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Oh, Brian, last thing.
Eat it while we can.
Last thing, in the theater when you saw Barbie, when the mom gave the speech, did your theater start clapping too?
When the mom, I think people kind of were. It wasn't like erupting, but like
my theater, it was like
that's right.
For my theater, it was like a quiet for a second, then snap, 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 clap, 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 clap. It just kind of it turned up, and I'm just looking. I'm like, yeah, I guess she talking that shit.
You just need one person to start that.
Yeah,
you probably could have done that the entire movie. Honestly.
Yeah, but that part, I feel like they had a pause. Like, hey, man, take that in for a second.
It was a tirade. For sure. It was like manifesto level speech.
Yeah, she went in. All right, that's cool. I was just curious because I was like, oh, they clapping. Bet. Good for y'all. I was clapping too.
All right. Let's wrap it up there. Friends, hit us up on @confidently_pod on Instagram. Let us know what you thought of Barbie or Oppenheimer. Did you enjoy them? Did you hate them? Did you find them meh? Let us know.
I'm going to start the clap. We did it, guys.
We solved war and we solved sexism.
Bye.